Ground Radio. New voices amplified.
Greetings, thank you so much for tuning in and welcome to Ground New Voices Amplified. This is a platform and a program where we bring you some of the amazing creators from Zimbabwe. And today we happen to be having the beautiful, the most amazing, super talented, amazing creative, Zana Kay. Welcome to Ground.
Thank you for having me, Plot. Thank you. Hello, Zimbabwe. Hello, rest of the world.
It's such an honor to have you on the program. I've been trying to get hold of you for a while. You're a busy woman, but I appreciate the time that you've taken to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Zana Kay, is that the name that appears on your ID?
No. My full name is Nomakhosazana Ncube. Nomakhosazana means it's Xhosa. It means queen, and Ncube means to shine or light. So those are my first two names, Nomakhosazana Ncube. So I shortened them because there are a lot of Nomas, you know. Yes. So when you come to Southern Africa and you introduce yourself as Noma, it's always Nomalanga, Nomathemba, Nomathamsanqa, Noma. So I use the last four letters of my name, which is Zana. And so that's how I came about the name Zana Kay.
Wow. I must say it's a befitting name, considering that you've been shining. And I see even from the artifacts and your designs behind you and what you're wearing today. Wow, we'll get more into those details later on. But let's take you back a bit. Zana Kay as a kid. What sort of environment did you grow up in and what was feeding your imagination as a young child?
Well, I had a very interesting creative journey. So I grew up in Bulawayo, and I'm the last of four children, and I was raised by a single parent, my mother. I was autistic as a child, and I struggled to speak, and I struggled with social skills. So I could hardly speak until I was around 4. And so what that did to me, I think for the first, about 10 years of my childhood, it made me very timid. I was very timid. I was very shy. I didn't like people. I'm sorry to say, wasn't very comfortable because I couldn't really talk, you know, I couldn't. And I struggled academically a lot at school as well because of my autism. And you know what they say, that when a certain faculty is lagging back in someone's brain or mind, a certain faculty then takes over and does more to compensate. So I think a lot of my creative ideas, a lot of my creative processes, and a lot of my creative thinking came from there because I spent a lot of time in my head, you know, because like I said, I was a timid child. I didn't talk very much. I didn't have a lot of friends. So everything happened in my head. So I was my friend in my head, and I was myself, and I was constantly having conversations with myself. And you know, if you are a creative and a writer, you know that internal conversation is very important when it comes to creativity. So I think that spurred a lot of my creative language, being able to be, you know, the actor and the audience in my own mind. Yes. And I played a lot with myself, as you know, so I would make things. I come from a poor background, I had a very poor childhood, and I remember that my mom at some point when I was very young, she leased out the garage. It was at the time when a lot of people were starting to do carpentry work and make couches and what we call in Zimbabwe my room divider and kitchen units. And so there were all of these, you know, young indigenous companies that would do that. So my mother leased out the garage to these people that were making wardrobes and beds and gardens, and there was a lot of wood. And I think that was my first experience with making. And instead of playing with dolls and things like that, I was always put like timber together and figuring out how the glue works and how the nails work and how paint and I had a very young experience with making things, and for me I think that speaks a lot to who I became later, which is an architect and a fashion designer, and my fascination with putting materials together and making things and building things, be it architecture or fashion. So
Wow.
that was really my childhood. I did a lot of at around 10 years, my autism broke. So I started to participate, I started to get more social, and I did a lot of drama. I did a lot of poetry. I did a lot of art. I excelled in those fields, in those kind of extracurricular activities in primary school. Um,
Yes.
and moving on to high school, then I did a lot of public speaking and a lot of writing. I didn't do a lot of drama though in high school. So that is, I think, a general idea of my creative journey from childhood um, to that 18, to around the years of 18.
Your background, you defied your background to be what you are today. Is this something that you saw coming at some point?
No, I wouldn't say it's something that I saw coming, but I would say that because of like I said, because of a lot of internal conversations I had as a child, I decided at a very young age that I wanted to be an architect and a model. So I have a song book, there's a time when we had song books and we would write
Songbooks, yes.
lyrics of songs and stuff. So I have a book one that I wrote when I was 12 years old. I still have it, where I wrote that when I grow up, I want to be an architect and a model. So I think I would then, based on what I've become now and what I wrote then, which is when I was 12, I am 35 years old now, and I wrote that when I was 12. I guess it speaks to the fact that I've just really been persistent and resolute and really kept my eyes on that thing that I deemed as a prize when I was very young. Um, I just kept uh, gathering as much information about architecture and about modeling. Funny how modeling then translated into fashion is that I started to interact a lot with fashion when I was doing modeling work, when I was doing page entry. And that's how I discovered that I actually enjoy the idea of designing fashion and making clothes. And
Yes.
that's how I went naturally from architecture into fashion, and I now simultaneously move between fashion and architecture.
Wow, quite interesting there. But then you started an initiative, a project, a tribe called Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Well, what's the idea? What was the idea behind?
So A Tribe Called Zimbabwe is a brand. It's a brand whose thrust is to celebrate Zimbabwean culture, heritage, identity through fashion and architecture. The idea was born from the desire to put Zimbabwe's culture on the map. There is an urban energy in Zimbabwe that is not being packaged and marketed, and that's not being capitalized on, that's not being maximized on the cultural entrepreneurship stage. And I'm very passionate about culture, and I just then came up with the idea that, why not find a way to market and to promote and to celebrate our culture on the global stage. So that's how I came up with the Tribe Called Zimbabwe, as a means to celebrate the heritage and identity that we share as Zimbabweans.
Kuti iende atimboda iye ground yakaipa mazviziva hanzi ndiyo inongotora mikombe yose saka musarwadziwa pull up haineti kudzokorora iye ground Zimbabwe, yeah. Big up Plot Makoeno is popped in, dear boy.
Great, welcome back. I wanted to ask about the uniqueness and the detail and the texture in the designs that you make. They're quite strikingly different, unique. It's not stuff that you would find elsewhere. So I think that's one thing that really caught my attention. What's the creative process? What gets in there? What story are you trying to tell?
Like I said, I'm trying to celebrate Zimbabwean culture, heritage, and identity. And to go deeper into that, I think, funny that you're asking that. We have forgotten who we are. And I would identify my fashion style or my design style as neo-tribal Afrocentric. And when I say neo-tribal Afrocentric, I'm just avoiding the term just Afrocentric, because when I say, oh, I just design African wear, it becomes a very loose term. But when I say neo-tribal, and I'm trying to take you back to the zeitgeist, to the milieu of the origin of my ideas, which is tribal fashion. When I think of fashion, I think in terms of the unique ethnicities in Zimbabwe. I think the Ndebele people, and I'm not just thinking the Ndebele people walking on the street. I'm thinking of the genesis of the Ndebele people. I'm thinking of the genesis of the Kalanga, the Tonga, the Shona, the Venda people. From a tribal perspective, I go back to the tribal perspective, which is why you see I love to celebrate horns, because our culture is so rich, and it's rich in symbolism. And a lot of that symbolism, unless we go back to where we come from, we are not able to talk about it, to harvest it, to translate it, or to celebrate it, because we've lost a lot of that, which is mainly because of colonialism. So what I do is I go back to those tribal elements, to that tribal heritage, that tribal identity, and I try to look into those elements that that we use to celebrate, those elements that give us identity as a people. And I try to translate that into a language that we can understand as modern day Zimbabweans. So, which is why I use cowhide, because, cowhide has been there for millennia. The specific cowhide that I use is the Nguni cow, the Nguni cowhide. And I just want to say that for a lot of people that don't uh, that don't understand Nguni cows, um, there's been a very strong misconception that Nguni cows belong to Nguni people. But what actually is the reality, or the truth, is that the Nguni cows were named by the first white settlers that found these speckled cows in Southern Africa that were drought resistant and resistant to disease as well. And these cows are they're descended from the Sanga cattle, which is the Bosphorus cattle, and they've been around for 8,000 years. Just to give you some contrast, Great Zimbabwe is only 1,100 years old, but Nguni cattle have been around for 8,000
before. Yeah.
Yes, so which means that they're really cattle that belong to the Bantu people, which is all the people of Southern Africa, which is Zimbabweans, Namibians, South Africans, the Tswana peoples. And so I went back into that, and I said, the Zulu have a way that they identify themselves in terms of fashion on the global stage. The Namibians, the Himba, have a way that they identify, the Malawians, the Tswana. But as Zimbabweans, on the global stage, we have nothing that identifies us as Africans, as a cultural people. We're constantly borrowing from other cultures. We're borrowing from the Nigerian. We are borrowing from the Zulu. We are borrowing, we're always stealing a little elements and making our own cocktail. And then we come up and we say, this is what a Zimbabwean traditional dress is like. But that's because we've been lazy to go back into our tribal roots and to think about what are those things that we valued? What are those things that gave us this great royal heritage? Because you need to understand that Zimbabwe was a very was a great empire, you know, it was known throughout Africa. I don't know if it's legend that Queen of Sheba once visited Great Zimbabwe. You know, you need to understand that King Mzilikazi was the greatest militant African leader after Shaka. But there's nothing in the way we dress. There's nothing in our culture, you know, that nothing that actually shows that we are those people. It's like we've lost ourselves. So that's how I came up with, you know, cowhide as a medium, as a material that I want to use to identify Zimbabweans, to celebrate our uniqueness and our culture. And, you know, cows are royal as well. You know, they're important. They play very important roles in our social, cultural lives. You know, we use them for so many things in Zimbabwe, to trade, for lobola. Cows play a very important role. So cowhide is a very royal, very regal material in Zimbabwe, I believe. And cow horns, you know, speak of power and strength and presence, you know, and security and royalty. And those are the small elements that I infuse into my fashion. And that's why I say it's neo-tribal, because it's inspired by tribal values and history and that sort of thing.
And I'm just thinking to myself, do you ever encounter stereotypes of some sort?
Oh yeah, all the time. And I do think those stereotypes are you know, a result of colonization. You know, some people have struggled to liberate themselves from colonial thinking. I find I've been asked, Kuti, am I a sangoma? Am I nganga?
Yes.
Am I, you know? I don't know. It's a very disturbing kind of thinking, especially when it comes from a fellow African, a fellow black man. When you celebrate your culture and you celebrate your African dress, that automatically it's associated with, you know, a certain title, you know. Fashion is fashion, you know. Religion is religion. But a lot of people, you find, I'll just give the example. How many times when you're wearing a suit, an European suit, do you get asked if you're a reverend or a pastor? You know, but you find with African people, when you wear cowhide and horns and, you know, you're really into this Afrocentric things, the assumption is that you're an African spiritualist, you're a traditional healer, you're a spirit medium. And it's a very disturbing plot, and it's that kind of mindset, you know, that I am trying to break, you know, that I'm trying to remove, Kuti. You know, we are African people, and African people have an African dress that has nothing to do with African spirituality or African religion. Yes, it is linked, but we are Africans first, you know, and we need to have something that identifies us as Africans or as Zimbabweans, you know, without being judged for it. So yeah, to answer in short, I do get a lot of that, and I'm used to it now. But I'm happy that a lot of people, because of the way I've been presenting my work, I'm happy that a lot of people have been catching on and have been embracing African fashion as something that is cool, you know, something that is regal, something that you could wear to see the queen. I would wear this to see the queen confidently, you know.
It looks
I'm
beautiful.
happy that African people are embracing that.
Wow. Still on that, I mean, there was a conversation not so long ago about the Zimbabwean dress, and we saw quite a lot of designs that were proposed or introduced. And this has been a conversation within our society for a very long time. Now people dress up to go for the lobola, people dress up for different occasions, and the African fabric, whose tradition and roots are still made in a lot of controversy as to where exactly do they originate from. And what's your take, the Zimbabwean dress? What would you say? What would you have contributed if you had a chance to participate in crafting or creating what could be termed as a traditional Zimbabwean dress?
I'm quite an independent thinker, Plots, and a bit of a rebellious type. So what I would have contributed, I would have said that before there were borders, before the white settlers came and drew lines and created borders there were kingdoms, there were tribes, and Africa is made out of so many ethnicities, so many tribes. And for us to water down or just to precipitate the idea of a national dress into a picture of a bird or a color or 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 a single pattern, I think it's very myopic and it does an injustice to our true heritage because we have so much. Zimbabwe alone, what we call Zimbabwe, we have so much to offer. The Ndebele have their own murals that they value. And the Ndebele have their own patterns, their own colors, their own materials that they value. Culture, the Shona have theirs, and when I say the Shona, it's also just a loose term. The Zezuru, the Karanga, the Kore Kore. You have your own distinct murals, your own distinct culture that you would like to see in a national dress. And then we have the Tonga, we have the Xhosa, the Amafengu, we have the Kalanga, we have the Sotho. Really,
we're so diverse.
really, to then just say, this one emblem is going to be on the national dress, I think it's a way to I'm trying to find a politically correct term. We are not celebrating, we're not doing justice to the cultures, to the tribes that are in Zimbabwe. Everybody loves this country. Everybody wants Zimbabwe to be celebrated. Everybody wants Zimbabwe to be on the map. And if you're going to put on a national dress, it's something that you want to be proud of, And so instead of thinking of a national dress, let's think of promoting culture. Let's start there. Are we promoting Tonga culture? Are we promoting Ndebele culture? Are we promoting, before we even think of national, are we promoting those cultures? Do we have a day in the month, which is like a heritage day, where you can show up at work dressed in your Venda attire or dressed in your Shona attire proudly? Do we have that day? Do we have a day in the month where we do that? We do not. So we are jumping a lot of steps, I feel, and it might cause some issues in the future. So I do think maybe in national dress for now, let's talk about celebrating cultures. Let's talk about unifying cultures. Let's talk about bringing people together. Let's talk about using fashion to help people understand each other's cultures and tribal
I totally concur with you. I totally agree with you there. You share almost similar sentiments that I have had with regard to the national dress and just the whole conversation about national pride, our heritage, and how we sort of fail to celebrate diversity. We always think Zimbabwe is Shona, is Ndebele, that's it. And there are so many other tribes, there are so many cultures that are so rich that we have not even had, on the national table. But looking at some of the highlights of your career, you've done some amazing displays and you've been part of so many different initiatives. What would you say have been the highlight of your career to date, designing-wise?
I think design-wise for me, it would be just to go back a little. My passion is culture and fashion, and my passion is for Zimbabwean people to start to appreciate their fashion and to start to appreciate their culture. So it's been an honor for me for people that are influential in Zimbabwean spaces to embrace my work, because it shows that what I started or not, what I set out to do is making sense. So I have dressed some people in the creative industry, musicians, local musicians. I've dressed people that are in the political sphere. I've dressed people that are in the traditional, I would say the traditional sphere, kings and chiefs. So for me, that is a very strong highlight because it ticks off the boxes of what I originally set out to do. It would be meaningless for me to have work that is worn or spoke about in the USA and America when my own people in Zimbabwe don't appreciate the movement that I am trying to create.
And let's talk about that global footprint. Has your work managed to make it on the global space, or is still confined to Zimbabwe? And if so, it has managed, how has been the reception?
The reception has been amazing. I've had the opportunity to travel to Europe and to America to present my work, and the reception was uh, it was quite humbling, and it was a welcome reception. It was disappointing in the sense that I realized that Africans that are outside of Africa are more eager to embrace Afrocentric fashion than Africans in Africa.
In Africa.
You know, so you find a lot of my clientele is in Europe and America because these are people that really want to identify with home. They really want to celebrate home. They really want to keep up with fashion trends back home. So the reception has really been amazing. I have been invited to a number of exhibitions, fashion exhibitions and expos. And I think that speaks to my work really standing out and making an impact.
Great. And how do you balance?
Well, I studied, I would reluctantly say architecture is my day job because I studied architecture. So I would say I'm an architect first, but because I'm a creative as well. So, and I'm able to translate that creativity into value. That also part becomes my day job. And but to answer your question, the transition between architecture and fashion is easy for me. And that is simply because, you know, I like to explain to people that architecture is in essence the art of creating spaces, which is
Yes.
habitable spaces. Fashion is also the art of creating spaces, but intimate spaces. So, whereas in architecture, you are designing a house that or building a space that is going to be inhabited by many people.
Many
In
people.
fashion, you are designing a house or a space that will be inhabited by one person, you know? So, a building like a house is a
Yes.
dress. A building is a dress that is worn by many people. So if your family is in a house, that building is like a dress. You
Wow.
understand? And a garment, this is
Yes.
also it's like a building that is worn by one person. So there isn't a difference between fashion and architecture because it's all about creating a space. It's about creating a space that celebrates me, that celebrates my culture, that celebrates my values. It's all about how materials come together. So the same way I I envision how concrete and steel and glass come together to form a building. It's the same way I envision how cowhide and horns and lace and feathers come together to form a dress. It's all about tectonics, which is the art of how materials come together. And for me, that transition, then I'm constantly thinking in terms of spaces and materials and so my world is very meshed up. I don't feel it as a confusion because
Yes.
the way where I'm thinking in terms of a building as a space, or I'm thinking in terms of a garment. You know,
Yes.
it's a fluid and effortless. So I don't struggle with balance in that regard.
Wow. What kind of books do you read?
Oh, okay. So I enjoy a lot of Pan-African books. I started out I think I have an obsessive mind when I like a particular writer. I read a lot of Ama. I've read a lot of that. I read a lot of Pan-African books. I read a lot of poetry as well, a lot of African literature. My favorite, and I have all his books, by the way. I have to mention him.
Right.
My favorite writer. is Dambuzo Marechera.
Dambuzo, the legend, yeah.
Yes, Dambuzo is my favorite because he thought outside the box. This was a brilliant mind, extremely intelligent. And I think he studied English or English and writing or something, but he found a way for the English language to speak his language, you know. So if you read a lot of his books, you know, he writes in English, but he's thinking in Shona, you know, he writes in English, but
So true.
yeah, he's thinking like a very educated. He had a way to manipulate the English language into a language that spoke to the African men, that spoke in the musings and the attitude and the character of an African man. And how that has inspired me is that, you know, I'm a born free who is surrounded by all of these materials, who's surrounded by concrete and steel and glass and all of these things that colonialism brought. And I'm also trying to use that as a weapon and use that as a language, as a means to speak my language, which is the African language. So, yeah, Dambuzo is definitely my favorite.
That's so great. From books to music, who's on your playlist? 3 or 4 artists that you're currently listening to?
3 or 4. Okay.
Yeah, or even more.
I have very eclectic ears. I listen to a lot of everything actually. I'm currently liking our Kiwe.
Our Kiwe, she's awesome.
Yeah, I'm liking a lot of her rap. I like Zo 7.
Yeah.
I like Ja Praiser.
Great.
I'm listening to, I like Mozart as well. A lot of classical music. It's very creative music. I like especially Mozart's the Magic Flute.
Yeah.
I like Piotr Tchaikovsky, Four Seasons. I like Michael Bublé.
Yeah.
I like Elevation Worship and Bethel Worship.
Right.
I like Jamasta.
Oh, nice. Which one is your favorite from Jamasta?
Hello Mar. I like Hello Mar and Unanzani. Yeah, I like that. I like him. I like his vibe, you know.
And you mentioned all the time, right?
I like his vibe. Yeah, so I'm quite eclectic when it comes to music. I listen to pretty much everything. I just don't listen to a lot of hard metal or rock, but I listen to everything.
Were you a fan of Soulja Love?
No, actually, not much. I didn't even know any of his songs. Sadly, I knew his personality. I knew him as a popular figure, but I didn't really listen to a lot of his songs, to be honest. But I do respect his skill. He was very popular. He was loved a lot by young
people. So much love.
Here in Bulawayo, may he still rest in peace. Here in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe, the world over, he was loved by a lot of Zimbabweans. But I would be lying to say, you know, I listened to a lot of his music. I actually started to listen to, what do you call this music? Is it Zimbabwe dancehall?
Yeah, Zim dancehall, yes.
I think I started to have ears for it with Winky D.
Oh, okay, big one.
Winky D. Yes, I love Winky D. I like Winky D as well. So I think I started to listen to, because I'm Ndebele.
Yes.
Okay. So my journey of learning Shona has been very long.
How good is the Shona? Okay.
Ndinotaura zvisingaiti, ndinotaura yeah, kutaura kuita interview yese ine Shona.
Nice, nice.
But you know, so sometimes when you listen to music, you know, your ability to really enjoy the music is when you can understand the lyrics. Yes. So when you find with a lot of this dancehall music,
yes,
the bars or the notes hit you when you actually understand what they're talking about.
True.
Otherwise, it just sounds like beats.
Yeah, it just sounds like
I think as my journey to learn the Shona language progressed and I started to understand those lyrics, then I started to actually enjoy the music. Okay, that's what they're talking about, you know. But I did try to sample some of Soldier's songs. They're very deep, and yeah.
Great, great. What would be your word before we close off? What would be your word of advice to a young person?
I would say that I guess the fastest way to commit suicide in Zimbabwe as a young person is to stop dreaming and to give up. I find that everybody has problems. Every country has problems. Every family that has problems. I find that a lot of creatives tend to give up because of the economic situation, because of the political situation, and they tend to give up on their dreams because there is an expectation that someone should help them. There's an expectation that there should be a body or a ministry that supports them. It's lovely to have that. But I just want to say that the person who is the most responsible for your dream is yourself. You are the one that dreamt the dream, and it's your number one role, it's your number one responsibility to bring that dream into fruition. Show up for yourself, turn up for yourself. Don't expect anyone else to take you seriously. Don't expect a group of people, an organization, a nation to take you seriously if you don't take yourself seriously. So first of all, I'd like to Zimbabwe has a lot of talent, and it's hidden. A lot of young people are waiting to be discovered. People are busy. Discover yourself, put yourself out there, put your work out there. There's so many mediums, there's social media now. You can put your work out there. The second thing I want to mention is the disconnect that a lot of creatives have between professionalism and creativity. It's not enough to have talent. Talent is just a seed. Behind the talent, there are so many other facets, there's so many other departments that make one a success. Uh, Study, research about your industry, be financially literate, understand how the business of your industry works. It's not enough to say I can sing. It's not enough to say I can draw. It's not enough to say I can design a dress. Do you know how the fashion industry works? Do you know the business of the fashion industry? Do you know the other players that are involved in the fashion industry? Do you understand financial literacy? Do you understand how money works? Do you understand how social media works? Do you understand? So there's so many other things that I feel that creatives and talented people in general just take for granted, and they expect that they'll show up with their talent and all of a sudden they'll be billionaires. But it doesn't work like that. It takes hard work, and that's the bulk of the work is that's where the bulk of the work is. Talent is just 10%. 90% is hard work. It's studying, it's reading, understanding, it's creating strategic partnerships, it's creating social capital. There is so much that if you master that, then with even 2% talent, you can make it. So that would be my encouragement.
Well, I was actually trying to write as much as possible as we were talking, because I feel this is so much worth of knowledge that every creative out there definitely needs to hear. And I hope most of you are going to catch up to this word, powerful word. How do people connect with you, and how do people access your store to be able to make orders and buy the clothes from you?
Okay, I have a website, www.atribecodezimbabwe.com. You could visit there and have a look at my gallery and the work that we do at A Tribe Called Zimbabwe. We also have an Instagram page, which is at A Tribe Called Zimbabwe. That's on Instagram. You can have a look at our gallery there and what we do, and you can also purchase from there. Personally, my personal page is at Zana Tribe Queen on Instagram. We also have a Facebook presence, which is at A Tribe Called Zimbabwe. And I'm personally on Zana Kay. That is on Facebook.
Wow, thank you so much, Zana Kay. I really appreciate it. If you're not designing, if you're not doing your architecture work? What occupies your time? What are you doing?
Reading. I do a lot of reading, and I do a lot of sleeping. So my work, what my typical day looks like is my day starts at around 7 p.m., 8 p.m. in the evening, and I work through the night until 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And so I'm in bed. When people wake up to go to work, I'm actually going to sleep, and I'm up at around 10 a.m., 11 a.m. I do a little bit of admin, social media work, and I do some reading, and then I get back into the cycle. So I have a very awkward kind of working pattern. So I value my sleep because when I tend to get involved in a project, I tend to obsess over it. And I can go sometimes for days without sleeping. I can go like 72 hours working on something. I can go like 36 hours working nonstop on something. So whenever I can stop and sleep, I enjoy my sleep.
Wow, thank you so much, Zana. I really appreciate it, and it's been awesome. It's been great speaking to you. To everybody who's been watching, I've been speaking there to an amazing creative. She's representing Bright Zimbabwe through a tribe called Zimbabwe. You should look it up, tribecodezimbabwe.com. That's the website, and you see a gallery of the works that she's making. Super, super amazing. So until next time, stay tuned to A Ground, New Voices Amplified. I'm out.